from Pop Turner, speaking to Laurent Pitre about the Sacrifice game, which is now streaming on Shudder. Welcome to the show, man. It's good to see you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You know, it's interesting because this is one of those movies where, like, I remember when it was announced. Like, like, you were all cast for it, and like you were gonna go do it and everything, and then it made its kind of festival run, and now it's on Shudder. When does it start kind of to hit you that something you made is going to be seen by people? Is it kind of like a week out, or is it even when you wrap, when you start thinking like, man, eventually someone's going to see this thing?
That's a great question. I mean, to make this horror film was it felt like a rock and roll show. Honestly, it felt like a fever dream because it was all night shoots.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like the movie was going to come out. It was kind of a beautiful miracle that it all came together. But yeah, it only became real when it premiered at Fantasia, and then the room was packed, and I was like, oh my God, I guess they have to show it at this point.
Yeah.
And then seeing it up on the big screen was such a cool experience. I think that was such a cool way to release a film that went to streaming, was like that there's this like amazing experience that happens when, you know, just your movie gets seen in front of an audience, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thing because, you know, I'll put it in the description. I'm not going to go into big details, but like we're going to talk a bit of spoilers. Okay. So spoiler alert for people who haven't seen it, but I do find it interesting because, you know, when people see the trailer, this becomes kind of a movie where people go in and terrorize and try to kill certain people because of this kind of ritual and everything. But when you watch this movie, it becomes way more than that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm wondering what it was like when you were reading the script for this, because I can't even imagine reading it beginning to end, because it does a 360 a little bit, this movie, if you know what I mean.
Totally. Yeah, it was a really cool experience because from receiving the sides to the script, I had no idea what was going on kind of thing. And in fact, the description of my character, Doug, was the first word said short. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not getting this one, so might as well just have fun with this audition. And I just channeled like a kind of like Chihuahua energy of like, you know, all bark, no bite kind of thing, like the kind of underdog of the whole gang of cult members. So that was really fun, and I just threw it away and had fun, and then I was exactly what they were looking for Doug. And then when we did our script reading, it was super fun because every single cast member is genuinely some of the nicest people I've ever met, and so kind. And you meet them in person, like even Mena Massoud, who plays the most sadistic of the gang, is one of the nicest human beings on planet Earth. And just like, it was so funny to see us all transform in that first read. And even Georgia Acken, who's like a complete phenomenon of a young child actor, she just was like, she terrified us from that first read. So like, we knew something was going to happen, and the script itself had so much going for it already. And then when it came to shooting it, there was also a great amount of freedom given to us by the director, Jenn Wexler, to just go out and play. And I think especially for a character like Doug, she gave me a lot of leeway in terms of like, I understood like the moments that I could improvise and kind of enhance with the comedy, especially of the whole piece, you know?
I find it really interesting because one of the things that I found really kind of cool about this movie is I feel like there was a domino effect in regards to one of the storylines of the characters, that your character kind of starts, your character Doug, because I feel like at one point with everything that kind of goes on, because chaos kind of ensues and people who they think they are not the people and everything. Your character is like the first one who starts kind of doubting the cult and what you were doing, and like kind of like is this what we should be doing? Like if you think about it, you're the first one that kind of sees a lot of the red flags, and then Olivia's character and everything. So I'm just curious from an acting storyteller perspective, what's that like being that kind of character that is kind of raising awareness to like a real downfall for all the characters early on? Because there's like a responsibility there in a way, right?
Yeah, totally. It was so much fun. And again, it was so much fun to experience that movie with an audience, not just on the streaming platform itself, but in these theaters where people were reacting and laughing off of what, like I was saying, because yes, as you said, I'm like this kind of audience member perceiving the movie in a sense, like
Yes,
going, "Oh my
because
God!" Like,
you're like part of the cult, but are you part of the cult, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think it's important in those horror
It's
movies.
so true. It's like, what are you doing there?
Exactly. It was so much fun to be that guy who's like, we probably shouldn't do that thing, or this is where things are gonna go wrong. And then seeing how the audience received that, and just it creates the shape of the movie, which is like, I understood that Doug's kind of purpose, even narratively, was to create those like moments where we could laugh, so it wasn't just darkness and sadness and horror throughout, but really that there's this entertainment factor. And it's something I actually picked up from watching a masterclass that Samuel L. Jackson was giving.
Yeah.
That he was like in some of his movies. I forget if it was it's the one. What's the one? Oh my God, it's blanking in my head. But the one with Bruce Willis where he's
Yeah, Unbreakable.
no, not Unbreakable.
Glass?
The one where he's they're two cops. The one is a New York cop. Anyways, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But he was like, I was the audience's a grounding factor, being able to, like, when something weird happens, acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So that way the audience goes, oh, at least he's acknowledging it, and we can believe it now because there's at least one of us that noticed it, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
When horror films skip that acknowledgement of the weird, then we don't believe it as much. So it was kind of cool to have Doug in there for that.
Oh, that's so true. And it's interesting because the landscape of horror movies has changed in regards to, there's been a big kind of surge in appetite for a lot of this content. And, you know, the Sacrifice Game is available now to stream on Shudder, which is literally like the horror movie fans' playground, right? Like, that's my favorite. Like, I'm a big horror movie guy. So, like, that's like, I was so happy for you and like the cast when I found out it's gonna be on Shudder, because it's a big deal. Like, it is.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So what's it like kind of being in a horror movie at a time where there is a big kind of appetite for the content? Because I feel like that's a different question on its own compared to like what's it like being in a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good time for these movies right now.
Yeah, I'm loving it. As a filmmaker myself too, I love horror films because they tell dramatic, important stories in an entertaining fashion.
Yeah.
You know, you can deal with themes like, for example, with the Sacrifice Game, like acceptance of self, coming of age, and tell it with demons and cult members, and all of a sudden it's way more entertaining because of that, you know?
Yeah. And it's also more entertaining because of that too, because like this film also has the kind of like at the end of the day, it's like a satanic cult kind of going after people at this boarding school, but it's got obviously the gore and the slasher and everything you want, but like the big 360 kind of twist in this movie where you are like, I'm gonna say it, like, spoiler alert, but like you basically are led to the devil essentially.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's what you want in horror movies. You want that like payoff of like yes, this is so good. And that whole scene you mentioned, George, like that was terrifying. Like the smile and everything. Like,
yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's amazing. It was terrifying. It's terrifying.
What was it like when you had those scenes where it was like all four of you? Because I feel like that's different, right? Like at one point there's like you're spread out, right? Where some of you were kind of taking, you know, like taking cover of the girls, like that they're tied up. But like, what was it like when it was all of you together specifically?
I loved it because it really carried the exact spirit of this movie, which is it's an ensemble movie.
Yeah.
I think we are only so successful and so strong in this movie because we all worked well together. Mm-hmm. Every single person brought their A game, and we just all fit our characters perfectly. So it was an honor to work with all of them in the same room. And it's funny because I find the pivotal moments are when all the cast members are one together in these like very pivotal moments. And yeah, they get very bloody, especially the one in the kind of middle of the movie where the whole movie flips on its head and all of a sudden, you know, something big happens that
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shifting gears a bit, you're in Montreal working on a play right now, which is awesome.
Yes.
I feel like theater is always where the craft is learned for the first time, and that's, I feel like, where you fall in love for acting. I feel like, you know, when I was in like high school, I was part of the stage crew of the production, so I wasn't acting in the productions, but I was doing all the I was part of the crew, right, doing the light board operator, spotlight, and everything. And there was this like, because especially like, you know, you do the play for like a week sometimes, right? So there's different performances, right? Like every night. There's this like energy in the air the morning of a performance. You know what I mean by that? Like you wake up in the morning and you're like we're performing for people tonight. Like that's like, there's like, you can't get rid of that energy. It's like the coolest thing, right?
100%. Yeah, I agreed to do this play, which is called Contes Urbains, otherwise called in English Urban Tales, which is like these Halloween horror stories, which is really funny that I'm doing that at the same time as a Halloween horror story film is coming out.
Yeah.
And I did this, you know, and it's funny, Doug in the same way did this for me too. I choose projects that scare me because as an artist, I think it's important to have that good level of fear when you're doing a role or a project because it helps you grow. So I'm doing this like 25-minute monologue in front of an audience in French, and it's something I haven't done in so long. I hadn't done theater for years. Just been focused on film and television. So it's really cool to come back to the stage and to do that. And it's only on for tonight and tomorrow. So it's a short run, but it was like, it's exactly what I needed. And it's so funny that it fell on the same opening weekend as all these wonderful projects.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. There's that, the Sacrifice Game. It's a great time for you, man. And I'm happy for you. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I wanted to thank you for coming on the show, man. It was really great chatting with you, honestly.
Thanks, Peter. Wow. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, yeah, the Sacrifice Game is now streaming on Shudder, so they could check that out. Your Instagram account, is it just your name if people want to keep up to date with anything?
It's at the Laurent Pitre. So T-H-E. Yeah. There's some other guys that try to get Laurent Pitre. There's a meteorologist and a bodybuilder, but I'm not neither one of those guys. But I got the website at least. I got laurentpitre.com. So I took over that domain at least. But yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm the Laurent Pitre on Instagram. And you can also find this if you're in the States. Sacrifice Game is also on AMC Plus, I believe, not just on Shudder.
Absolutely, yeah, it's on AMC Plus as well. And merci beaucoup, mon gars. C'est magnifique ça, ce film. C'est cool ça. Merci beaucoup.
Welcome.
Yeah, this is after. You did like all such fodder for previous episodes. You can, of course, catch Laurent Pitre as Doug in the Sacrifice Game, streaming now on Shudder and on AMC Plus. Until next time, this is Laurent and Peter Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.